Max Grayson had always been a bit of a walking contradiction. A self-proclaimed nerd with the build of an athlete, he could rattle off obscure facts about dinosaur species while effortlessly bench-pressing twice his weight. At 28, he worked as a paleontology lab technician at a small university, spending his days surrounded by fossils that smelled faintly of earth and ammonia. Not exactly glamorous, but he liked it that way. Life was simple, predictable, and quiet, until the day he broke the wrong fossil. It started like any other Tuesday, with Max nursing a lukewarm coffee and half listening to his coworker, Eddie, drone on about some sci-fi show he was binge-watching, and then the aliens are all like, "We seeded your planet," and the humans freak out, "Hey, are you even listening?" Max, carefully balancing a fossilized femur in one hand and a scalpel in the other, grunted. "Sounds riveting. Real edge-of-your-seat stuff." Eddie smirked. "Don't knock it, man. It's basically what we do, right? Dig up proof that humans weren't always the top dog." "Yeah, except we're dealing with dinosaurs, not aliens." Max gently scraped away at the fossil's surface, revealing what appeared to be a mineral deposit. "And we don't have a Hollywood budget." Eddie snorted. "Speak for yourself. I'm basically the Chris Pratt of this lab." Max rolled his eyes. If Chris Pratt had a receding hairline and a permanent Cheeto stain on his shirt. "Low blow," Eddie said, clutching his chest like he'd been shot. Max ignored him, focusing on the fossil. It wasn't unusual for their team to come across unusual finds, fragments of ancient bones, petrified plants, even the occasional preserved claw. But this femur was different. Its texture was smoother than it should have been, and the mineral deposit looked oddly deliberate. As Max applied more pressure, the fossil cracked with a sharp snap, revealing a hidden compartment inside. "Oh, crap," Eddie muttered, leaning over. "You broke it?" Max frowned. "It wasn't solid." "Look, there's something inside." Nestled within the broken bone was a vial of some kind, no larger than a thumb. Its contents shimmered with an iridescent glow, shifting colors like oil on water. Eddie whistled low. "That's either the coolest thing I've ever seen or the start of a horror movie." "You touching it?" "Of course not." Max hesitated, then grabbed a pair of tweezers. Carefully, he lifted the vial out and held it up to the light. The liquid inside seemed alive, swirling as if it had a mind of its own. "What do you think it is?" Eddie asked. "Probably a contamination," Max said, though he didn't believe it. His gut told him this was something different. Eddie grinned. "Alien goo. Calling it now." Before Max could respond, the tweezers slipped. The vial shattered on the lab table, sending a tiny spray of liquid into the air. Most of it splattered harmlessly, but a single droplet landed on Max's hand. "Damn it," he hissed, jerking his hand back. "You good?" Eddie asked. "Yeah, just startled," Max said, though his heart was racing. The liquid had already absorbed into his skin, leaving no trace. For a moment, nothing happened. Max exhaled in relief, brushing off Eddie's teasing about turning into a mutant. But as the day wore on, he started to feel strange. His hearing sharpened to the point where he could hear the faint hum of the building's HVAC system. His vision seemed crisper, able to pick out details he would have missed before. And there was a warmth in his chest, like a low-burning fire he couldn't explain. By the time he got home that evening, he was certain something was wrong. Max's apartment was a cluttered mix of books, fossils, and workout equipment, but he barely noticed his surroundings as he paced back and forth. His hand throbbed where the liquid had touched him, though there was no visible mark. Every nerve in his body felt alive, tingling with energy. He decided to take a shower, hoping the hot water would calm him down. But as he reached for the soap, his grip crushed the bottle like it was made of paper. "What the hell?" he muttered, staring at the mangled plastic in his hand. His mind raced, jumping from plausible explanations to wild theories. Was it some kind of chemical reaction? A hallucination? Eddie's stupid alien theory. His phone buzzed, breaking his train of thought. It was a text from Eddie, "You okay, man? You looked kinda pale when you left." Max didn't reply. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and headed back to the lab. He needed answers. The lab was eerily quiet at night, the usual hum of activity replaced by the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Max let himself in with his keycard and went straight to the storage room where they kept the fossil samples. If the vial had been inside a dinosaur bone, there had to be a record of where it came from. After rifling through several drawers, he found the file. The fossil had been discovered in a remote crater in South America, an area known for its unusually well-preserved dinosaur remains. But there was something odd about the report. It mentioned anomalous material found near the excavation site, though no details were provided. Max's curiosity deepened. He scanned the rest of the file, noting the name of the lead researcher, Dr. Eleanor Kane. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place it. As he read, a noise caught his attention, a soft shuffling, like footsteps. He froze, every muscle in his body tensing. "Who's there?" he called out. "No answer." Max's heart pounded as he moved toward the sound. His heightened senses kicked in, allowing him to hear the faintest creak of a floorboard and the whisper of fabric against metal. Someone was definitely in the lab. He rounded the corner and came face to face with a man in a black suit, his expression cold and calculating. "Mr. Grayson," the man said, his voice as smooth as glass. "We need to have a conversation." Before Max could respond, the man lunged. But Max wasn't the same as he'd been that morning. Instinct took over, and he moved with a speed and precision that shocked even himself. In seconds, the man was on the floor, groaning. Max didn't stick around to ask questions. Grabbing the file, he bolted out of the lab and into the night. Back in his apartment, Max locked the door and sat on the couch, his mind racing. Whoever that man was, he clearly wanted the fossil, and whatever secrets it held. Max's eyes fell on the file in his hands, and a sense of determination settled over him. He had to find out the truth, no matter what it cost. But as he stared at his reflection in the window, he noticed something that sent a chill down his spine. His pupils had changed, narrowing into thin slits like those of a predator. Something inside him was waking up, and he wasn't sure he could control it. The reflection in the glass haunted him. Max leaned closer, blinking hard, but his pupils remained reptilian slits, glowing faintly in the dim light of his apartment. He stumbled back, his chest heaving. His mind raced, grasping for an explanation that made sense, but there wasn't one. The more he thought about the glowing liquid, the fossil, and the man in black, the more surreal it all seemed. Whatever was happening to him, it wasn't natural. The file in his hands felt like a lifeline. He spread its contents across the coffee table, scanning each page for answers. Most of the information was dry, detailing excavation protocols and geological surveys, but one document caught his eye. It was a series of encrypted emails between Dr. Eleanor Kane and someone labeled only as Project Overseer. The tone was cryptic, full of references to exceeding expectations and ensuring containment. Max muttered aloud, "Contain what?" Before he could dive deeper, his phone buzzed. He almost ignored it, but something made him glance at the screen. It was a call from an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Max Grayson," a woman's voice said, calm and deliberate. "We need to talk." "Who is this?" he demanded, his voice rough with suspicion. "My name is Dr. Eleanor Kane," the woman replied. "I believe you've been looking for me." Max froze. Of course, he'd been trying to figure out how to contact her, but how had she known? "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, playing dumb. "Don't waste time lying," Kane said sharply. "You triggered the failsafe on the fossil. That means you've been exposed to something you don't understand. If we don't talk now, you won't survive what's coming next." His grip tightened on the phone. "Why should I trust you?" "Because," she said, her voice softening slightly, "you don't have a choice." Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. Max stiffened, every instinct screaming danger. "Don't open it," Kane said urgently. "Get out of there. Now." Max hesitated for half a second before bolting toward the fire escape. Whoever was knocking wasn't friendly, he could feel it. Grabbing the file, he shoved it into his backpack and climbed out the window just as the door crashed open behind him. The air was cold against his face as he descended the metal stairs. Below, a black SUV idled on the curb. Two more men in suits stepped out, scanning the alley. Max froze, trying to figure out his next move. "Go up," Kane's voice barked in his ear. "Roof access. I've got a chopper waiting 2 blocks over." He didn't stop to question how she was monitoring him. Trusting his newfound agility, Max vaulted onto the neighboring building's roof, sprinting toward the edge. His muscles burned, but it was a good burn, powerful, controlled. He felt more alive than ever. Behind him, shouts erupted as the men realized he'd escaped. A bullet ricocheted off a nearby vent, and Max ducked instinctively, his body moving faster than his brain. Adrenaline coursed through him, sharpening every sense. He could smell the metallic tang of gunpowder, hear the faint rustle of wind against his jacket. As he neared the far edge of the roof, Max spotted a helicopter hovering in the distance. Its blades whipped the air into a frenzy, and a searchlight scanned the ground below. He didn't think, he just ran. At the last second, he leapt, soaring across the gap between buildings with a speed and grace that should have been impossible. The chopper's door slid open, and a woman with sharp features and piercing eyes leaned out, motioning for him to jump in. Max grabbed the edge of the doorway and hauled himself inside just as another bullet grazed his shoulder. He winced but didn't stop moving, collapsing into the seat as the helicopter veered away. "Welcome aboard," Kane said, pulling the door shut. She looked him over, her expression unreadable. "You're lucky I found you in time." "Yeah, real lucky," Max said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He clutched his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. "Mind telling me what the hell is going on?" Kane handed him a first aid kit and crossed her arms. "You're not entirely human, Mr. Grayson. You're a hybrid, a byproduct of genetic experimentation designed to merge human and dinosaur DNA." Max stared at her, stunned. "You're kidding." "I wish I were," she said, her tone grim. "You're part of a project called Dinogenesis, initiated decades ago to create super soldiers with enhanced abilities. You're faster, stronger, and more resilient than normal humans. But there's a cost." "What cost?" he asked, his voice low. Kane hesitated. "The transformation isn't stable. Without intervention, the dinosaur traits will eventually take over completely." Max's stomach churned. He thought of his reflection, the slitted pupils that had stared back at him. "So what? I'm just supposed to accept that I'm some kind of freak experiment?" "You're more than that," Kane said. "You're the key to understanding the truth about our planet's past, and its future." Max scoffed. "Great. Another vague, world-saving prophecy. That really clears things up." Kane sighed. "There's more. The extinction of the dinosaurs wasn't a natural disaster. It was engineered by an advanced alien civilization that saw them as a threat. Those same aliens left behind genetic artifacts, warning us not to repeat their mistakes." Max shook his head, trying to process her words. "And the fossil? The vial? It's part of that legacy," Kane said. "A tool left behind to guide us, or destroy us, depending on how it's used. The people after you want to exploit it for their own gain. If they succeed, humanity doesn't stand a chance." Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Max leaned back, his mind reeling. None of this felt real, yet he couldn't deny the changes in his body, the strength coursing through his veins. Deep down, he knew Kane was telling the truth. "So what happens now?" he asked finally. "We stop them," Kane said. "But first, you need to learn what you're capable of." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small device resembling a futuristic wristband. "This will help regulate the transformation, but it's not a cure." Think of it as a leash for your inner predator. Max eyed the device warily. And if I don't wear it? You'll lose control, Kane said bluntly. And when that happens, you won't be Max Grayson anymore. Reluctantly, he let her fasten the device around his wrist. The moment it clicked into place, a wave of calm washed over him. The fire in his chest dimmed, though it didn't disappear entirely. Better? Kane asked. Not really, Max muttered. But he wasn't about to admit how much the device helped. The helicopter banked sharply, and Kane gestured toward the window. We're here. Below them, a sprawling crater stretched out like a scar on the landscape. At its center was a massive structure, half buried in rock and dirt. It pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light, like a heartbeat. What is that? Max whispered. The truth, Kane said. And the beginning of your real journey. The helicopter descended into the crater, the wind from its blades scattering loose dirt and debris. Max watched the massive structure grow larger as they approached, its dark, angular surface glinting faintly under the moonlight. The closer they got, the more it seemed alive, pulsing with faint, rhythmic light. It was alien, no doubt about that, and yet something about it stirred a strange sense of recognition deep within him. As the skids touched the ground, Kane motioned for him to follow. Max hesitated, his instincts telling him to stay put, but curiosity, and the faint hum of something calling to him, pushed him forward. He stepped out into the cool night air, his boots crunching against the rocky soil. This way, Kane said, striding toward the structure with practiced confidence. Max jogged to catch up, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. The crater felt desolate, yet it buzzed with an invisible energy that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As they approached the structure, a narrow entrance revealed itself, a jagged opening in the smooth, black surface. Kane pulled out a handheld device that emitted a soft beep, and the entrance responded, sliding open with a hiss. Warm light spilled out, illuminating an interior lined with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer as Max looked at them. What is this place? He asked, his voice echoing slightly. An observation post, Kane said, stepping inside. The aliens who wiped out the dinosaurs left these all over the planet. Most are dormant, but this one's been active since the day it was uncovered. It's been broadcasting a signal, a warning, maybe. Or an invitation. Max followed her inside, his unease growing. The air was warmer here, almost humid, and it carried a faint metallic tang. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, as if the entire structure was breathing. It was both mesmerizing and deeply unsettling. They reached a central chamber where a massive console stood at the center of the room, its surface covered in glowing symbols that shifted and rearranged themselves like a living language. Kane approached it and placed her hand on the console. The symbols rippled under her touch, and a holographic display erupted from the surface, filling the room with cascading streams of light. This is the database, Kane said. It contains records of the aliens' experiments, their observations, and their conclusions about Earth. Max stepped closer, his eyes wide. The holograms depicted scenes from Earth's distant past, towering dinosaurs roaming lush landscapes, massive asteroids hurtling through space, and, finally, alien ships descending through thick clouds. The ships unleashed beams of light that vaporized entire ecosystems, leaving behind only barren wastelands. They wiped them out, Max whispered, his voice trembling. They decided dinosaurs were too dangerous. Kane nodded. They saw them as an evolutionary dead end. Predators that would dominate the planet but never reach higher intelligence. So they reset the clock, paving the way for mammals, and eventually us. Max stared at the images, his mind racing. And the hybrids? What does any of this have to do with me? Kane manipulated the console, and the holograms shifted. Now they showed a series of genetic experiments, alien and human scientists working side by side to splice dinosaur DNA with human genomes. The results were hybrids, creatures like him, with human intelligence but primal instincts and enhanced abilities. You're the legacy, Kane said. The aliens didn't just want to wipe out the dinosaurs, they wanted to understand them. To see if their traits could be harnessed. The hybrids were their experiment, and it's still ongoing. Max took a step back, his stomach churning. So I'm just some lab rat? A test subject? No, Kane said firmly. You're proof that their experiment worked. You're stronger, faster, and more resilient than any normal human. And now, you're the only one who can stop the reclaimers. The reclaimers, Max repeated. Who the hell are they? Kane's expression darkened. Other hybrids. They were created in earlier phases of the experiment, but something went wrong. Their transformations were unstable, and they've embraced the dinosaur side completely. They believe humanity is a failure and that it's time for hybrids to take over. Max shook his head, trying to process everything. And they want to use this place? The signal? Kane nodded. The signal can activate dormant dinosaur traits in anyone with even a trace of reptilian DNA. That means reptiles, birds, and some humans. The reclaimers plan to broadcast it worldwide, turning the planet into their own version of Jurassic Park. Max swallowed hard. The thought of an entire planet overrun with reptilian hybrids sent a chill down his spine. How do we stop them? Before Kane could answer, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Max spun around just in time to see a massive figure step out of the shadows. It was humanoid in shape but covered in scales, its eyes glowing yellow and its teeth razor-sharp. Well, the creature said, its voice a guttural growl. Looks like we have a party. Max instinctively stepped in front of Kane, his body tensing. The creature laughed, a low, rumbling sound that made the walls vibrate. Relax, brother, it said, its gaze fixed on Max. I'm not here to kill you. Not yet, anyway. Who are you? Max demanded. Name's Zara, the creature said. Leader of the reclaimers. And if you're smart, you'll join us. Kane stepped forward, her voice cold. Don't listen to her, Max. She's trying to manipulate you. Zara ignored Kane, her yellow eyes locked on Max. Think about it, brother. Humans are weak. They've poisoned this planet, waged endless wars, and squandered every chance they've had to make things better. We're the next step. The rightful rulers of Earth. Max clenched his fists, his heart pounding. And what happens to humanity? You just wipe them out, like the aliens did to the dinosaurs? Zara shrugged. Not all of them. Some will adapt. The rest, well, survival of the fittest, right? Before Max could respond, Zara lunged. He barely had time to react, his enhanced reflexes kicking in as he dodged her claws. The two collided with a force that shook the chamber, their movements a blur of speed and power. Zara was strong, stronger than Max, but he refused to back down. Kane shouted something, but her words were lost in the chaos. The console behind them began to glow brighter, its symbols shifting rapidly. Zara glanced at it and smiled. Too late, she said. The signal's already starting. Soon, the whole world will wake up. Max felt a surge of rage and fear, his vision narrowing as his instincts took over. With a roar, he tackled Zara, slamming her into the console. Sparks flew, and the room shook violently as the structure reacted to the disruption. Max. Kane shouted. You have to shut it down. Max looked up, his mind torn between his human logic and the primal fury coursing through him. He saw the console, its symbols flickering, and knew what he had to do. With every ounce of strength, he reached out and plunged his hand into the glowing surface. Pain shot through him like fire, but he didn't stop. He could feel the signal, its energy pulsing through him, and he pushed back with everything he had. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he wasn't sure who, or what, he was. Finally, the light dimmed, and the room fell silent. Zara collapsed to the floor, unconscious, and Kane rushed to Max's side. He slumped against her, his body trembling. "You did it," she said, her voice shaking. "You stopped it." Max managed a weak smile. "Yeah. For now." As the structure powered down, Max felt a strange sense of peace. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he understood who he was, and what he had to fight for.